So. I
And
don't
we got with the conflict with the McGinty people, so.
Mhm.
Yeah, all right, so you guys are live.
So I
Nice.
think it's good.
It says it up here. So.
Good for
When
you
I
too.
have a caregiver in the morning. so-
Pretty
Okay.
reliable.
Need to stop all the cussing now, we're live.
You're fine.
That just means it's not recording on the computer, but you're still live.
All right, makeup everyone.
Hair.
So this is your Zoom screen. Which is where that's the agenda. This is where you run and by, I don't even.
All right. It's officially 11:04. Can I have a motion to call our meeting to order? Second by Rosalie, thank you. All right, so we began 11:04. We need a volunteer to take notes. Is anybody willing to do that? That is not named Powder Michael.
Someone who is a volunteer,
You don't mind?
they'll be rough and I'll leave them with you after the meeting.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. All right, so just moving through our agenda, our agenda is fairly light in terms of items, but I do think we'll have some things to talk about, which is nice. So beginning with a budget update, we have not spent any more money, so we're still sitting at our 7,000. I think that's going to change shortly, but we're just sitting on a pot of gold. So we're doing fine there. I have corresponded about trying to have our annual $5,000 put on to the budget for next year. I haven't got a final confirmation about that, but I'd like to just have that be a renewable that goes in each year. Moving on to membership, I've reached out to maybe half a dozen people that signed up at the election who other people endorsed, and I've gotten varied levels of interest. People seem to be more interested in a strategic volunteering for a project and not joining the committee, which is a little bit disappointing. And I'm kind of loath to just start randomly calling people on the list because I don't know most of those people. So again, if you have personal recommendations, that's always the first.
Here's a recommendation
Oh, great.
for you.
Fantastic,
Yeah, she reached out after the Episcopal Church.
fantastic, thank you. And along those lines, I'm excited that Will and potentially his wife Haley are going to be attending our November meeting, and they have expressed interest in rejoining the committee. So that
I filled out the form.
Chris Woody.
you did.
Did I
Yeah.
fill out a form?
Great. I did not.
And-
It has not made its way to me yet.
Yeah.
But that's great. Well, then thank you for attending. That's a double thank you for attending. Town website, we got Ann's name change spelled correctly, so that's a huge win. I've been cutting with some text for the website, just trying to update it a little bit. We had our Chestnut demolition meeting, and we came to a conclusion on that. We voted to approve with the contingency of a recording of the exterior, what they discover with the siding removed and a historical recordation, I think is the
Yeah.
word.
Which she is working on, I saw.
Great. And then I have, yes,
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
I noticed that the plaque is down. Do you know anything about that? Did they turn it in?
they have not turned it in. I did not know that, there's nothing that happens in this town that you don't notice. No.
Well, I walk a lot.
That's good. No, I did not notice that, and no, it has not been turned in, but they did say they were going to, so that's
I was
great.
just wondering.
Are they required to?
Hi, Allison,
Are they required to?
they said they would, they're not required to. How are you?
I'm good.
Good to see you.
Its only use would be a house that was built the same year.
I'm alive.
So, we'll get to the historic preservation ordinance in a second, but, I might as well actually kind of address it now. We have a meeting scheduled for, it was scheduled for 2 weeks from now on the 28th, but I'm going to be moving that to, I'm sorry, the 27th to November 3rd because Megan couldn't make it, so she wanted to reschedule. And I think it's really important that we have her on that call. And Pat has worked incredibly hard at drafting text for us all to review and get comments. So that meeting on the 3rd is really our chance to give our specific feedback to kind of this first draft. Pat and I are going to be talking to Allison and talking to Jeremy. So there's progress on that front, but I'm really interested in what Megan has to say. And again, in the conversation I had with her, she thought, you know, it was her opinion that this was, it was time for Camden to move forward with this. I think even our Chestnut demolition meeting made it really apparent that among other things we're hearing over and over again, the need for this is super relevant. So I think that's all good. And then moving on to the Christian Science Room, I had a discussion with a board member there, and there is some kind of appetite to just explore a conversation about could this be a potential place to archive town documents. So they're having a board meeting this month, and they're going to just discuss it amongst them. I emphasize that this is just a super casual exploratory conversation, just to see if there's any possible synergy there before it becomes formalized in any way, but I'm just kind of exploring that option. So there does seem to be interest on their part. Yeah.
We talked about this, I guess it was at the ordinance meeting, but Allison, I'm glad you're here. I've been doing a lot, I'm trying to find it, but I've been doing a bunch of exploration into this. And I'll say again, I think what we need to do is have get a committee together to really find out what this wants to be. And to program, and I've been taking notes, but I can't find them now. But I still think that, until we go looking for places, we ought to find out what needs to go in that place and how expansive it would be. So, but it's a really fun thing to think about architecture.
After our meeting, Allison's going to stay behind so we can kind of have a preliminary discussion about that, which I think would be great. And I think, you know, getting feedback from Megan and Jeremy in the same way would be a great way of shaping how we continue to draft this document. So before we move to review of minutes and then on to the select board, I just wanted to make, you know, I don't know if what it means to make this an official announcement, but I would like to have some kind of official recognition by our committee for all the work that Pat and Michael have done.
Yeah, I get it.
So Pat is largely stepping away from a lot of the work she's done on the committee. And, you know, I think you guys know far more than I do just how much work Pat has put in, how much work Michael has put in, and this, you know, committee would not have accomplished half the things it has over the last years. And she's been unbelievable to me, and I think unbelievable to the town. So I just wanted to make some kind of a motion for a formal recognition of all the work that Pat and Michael have done.
Thank you.
Okay,
It should go beyond just this committee.
I-
It's
I
been
absolutely,
well recognized, or not, I mean, well recognized informally, quietly among lots of people, working, everyone from town staff to town officials. But we should definitely, would name something after you, or you should be making a list of your demands
I
or
absolutely agree.
requests for the,
It's small in relation to others, so.
no, you guys are really just so wonderful to work with.
He's left a huge imprint on the town.
Oh, thank you.
You're not leaving the town though, are you? Or,
No,
okay.
no, I just need to step back. I have personal stuff I want to take care of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you personally and.
Well, I'm excited about the new direction and fresh blood and, yeah, it'll be great. It'll go on, it'll
There's gonna
be
be lots of calls to you.
better, that's fine. I'm available.
All right, so I hope everyone got a chance to review the minutes from our last meeting that Rhonda distributed. Yeah,
So, just one thing, there's something about my having, made a comment about something, but then I'm not, listed under the members present.
Oh,
And I know, I think I was on a Zoom.
all right.
But I don't know if that means that you get left off the members present or not.
No, that's,
So I would add my name to the members present, if indeed I did say
Maybe an
something.
asterisk or something.
and we have video evidence.
Okay.
And one other thing, usually we sign them so we know who takes the minutes, and I think that's a good idea in case you wanna let someone know that they left something out, or I don't know. Also, is that important anymore?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, usually we sign them.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Okay,
experience of everything.
so maybe,
You never know.
Okay, so can we
I move that we accept the minutes.
with the two
correction.
addendums that we add Rosalie and we add a signature to the preparer.
Okay,
All right. Second,
Okay.
improved, okay, great. Moving on. Brings us to Allison, who could be more excited to have here, so anything to report to us from the select board, do you think?
Nothing specifically from the select board. I would mention with the archives discussion, also just sort of my ongoing pitch that the Historical Society is in pretty desperate need of more involvement. We have found in addition to the historic Conway House building, we argue about what that's supposed to be called, Thorndike House, the Conway House, but the old homestead is in need of a new roof, and we're making progress on that. But we have about 120,000 in our endowment. The roof is going to draw that down about between 20 and 30,000. But then also the Kramer building, which is the museum cinder block building where all of our paper collection is housed. That has some significant deterioration on the corner of it. And we've gotten some preliminary estimates that put it around 50,000 just to kind of shore that building up. So just as part of the larger discussion about town-owned historic items and things that might get wet and should be stored somewhere else, or
Well, I'm just curious, do you think the path forward, addressing that Ken at the library is maxed out for space? We have documents that need a home, Historical Society does, and the town does. Do you think the path forward is finding a way to raise significant funds to make the Historical Society location, a large renovation and add archiving there? Or is it to find another facility that all the interested parties come together to create a real archive? What do you think the path forward is?
I think the path forward is to get together the people that are involved in each area who are willing, somebody from here, Ken Groves, people that, and figure out what the needs are and what makes the most sense. I think there's quibbling in the Historical Society about whether that building is worth saving or not, or but I think if we're doing it all in our own little group, without, it certainly doesn't make sense for multiple history-related entities to be doing major fundraising
Yeah.
at the same time for similar things. So we could use more board members, we could use all kinds of things, but it is a pretty incredible property over there. That is, there's a lot that's good with it and a lot of space, and it may very well make sense for that to be a location that we invest in, but it all depends, I think, so.
Yeah.
Well, you know, when, at the ordinance meeting, when Chris kind of introduced what he'd like to look and see what the need was, I thought that was a great idea, just to see what is where and how much are we talking about, and that can be done maybe prior to getting all the people together, and then have them add in, well, what do they have in their collections, and take a big broad look at it. I really think the two things go
Mhm.
together.
So,
And Rockport too, Rockport has all this stuff.
that's what I was gonna ask you. Remember how we were or you were sort of reaching out to the town office there to see what they had in their archives they needed to have housed differently or what?
Yeah, I mean, they have everything related to Camden that's before the separation.
Yeah,
So if you want to read the minutes from anything that happened before that, it's all in Rockport, and and most of it doesn't even have a copy over at the library. So what a loss that is for just our ability to figure anything.
They didn't put
Oh.
in archives when they built a new library?
They have done a lot in terms of, they've bound a lot of the documents, and they put it in this laminated thing, which actually makes it very difficult to digitize now, but so they've kept a lot very safe. I've gone over there, and probably I think Pat has too before, and done a cursory look at what they have. And Linda, there's a new town clerk now since, so Linda Greenlaw was really fiercely protective of, the actual items, making sure that nothing got lost or destroyed. So that's good, but we don't have a master index anywhere of everything that, we have and where it is. And I had heard at one point that the Rockport town office had moved. Some things were in the fire, some storage filled room at the fire department. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know. But yeah, we need somebody with the energy to get in touch with all the different entities and kind of remind, because everybody says, oh yeah, that would be a good idea.
Mhm.
But then people like me don't end up
Yeah.
having time to really follow up and
Yeah.
organize it. So
What do you think the appetite is on the select board for if the project like this got pulled together, and did they see this as a priority? What's your sense?
I think that, well, we have some money just that's been set aside in the town budget before for digitizing and archive stuff. It wasn't very difficult to get that in the budget before. We haven't really used it completely or very much at all. The select board probably, it's not something that we've talked about recently. So I find that they're mostly supportive of things that have broad support, and people, it would have to, I think if this group were to talk to the library and to Rockport, and it really, what it comes down to is generating the support from the people that already are involved. And that if that were a strong recommendation, I don't anticipate it being a problem. I've been trying to think about how we can get the select board to be more aware of the historical society stuff over there and Rockport, and because we talk all the time about, oh, it's so important that the towns work together, and well, everything, we used to work together, we used to be all the same town, and then literally everything from before that, we've been like, well, that's your responsibility, and that's your responsibility.
What year was that when it was separated?
91.
91?
1891,
Mhm. And
It's in your-
actually,
1890,
It's in your article.
oh, yeah.
yeah, and we talk about Camden's founding being 1791, which is actually not accurate, because when the towns separated, it was very clear that the old Camden ceased to exist and two new towns were formed. So, really our founding is the same as Rockport's. You know, all of their stuff says 1891 as their original date, but we're like, oh, we still like that 1700s number, and we use that, but I feel like we should hold ourselves to that. If we want to use that number, we should keep working with Rockport, and we should value all the history from before.
If it was 18, the buildings were protected, and suddenly feel like orphans.
I know.
Great. 3 meetings ago, there was some discussion about the piers. Is there any updated information about that?
Oh, that's a good point. That is, the planning board actually, you know, completely, they're now unanimously recommending that no new private piers, private residential piers be built in the outer or coastal harbor. And a lot of that actually, especially the coastal harbor, what seemed to drive that change was some of what they heard from the Historic Resources Committee members unofficially, with the idea that we have this vast area between Curtis Island and the state park that is, you know, aesthetically completely free of private piers. And so, and that's been brought on mostly in the past by the idea that most people that live there recognize that it would be a very foolish place to try to tie up a boat most of the time because of the wave action. So why not, at least, you know, that's a decision that local people have made almost by default for years and years based on knowledge of wave action. And then it's translated to this really preserved natural, you know, scenic landmark eligible, possibly coastline. So that was what the planning board is saying. The select board is not united. What's going out to voters in November will allow, theoretically, it will allow part of the harbor committee's recommendations to go forward, which would be that, so that when people would be allowed to make their existing piers higher to adapt to sea level rise, but we are supposed to be enacting a renewal of the moratorium, which would prevent, again, new piers from being built in order to allow us to fully thrash out this idea of whether we not want to go along with the planning board recommendation. So
it's a moratorium at this point from the planning, from the select board's point of view. And how long is the moratorium?
well, we'll have to actually, the moratorium is going to expire when a little after the November vote. And so what happens, there was sort of the select board wanted to be able to move forward with some things. They weren't comfortable just blanket extending the moratorium. They wanted people to be able to do work on their piers. So we are supposed to vote again to extend the moratorium at the same time as we're voting. Normally what the town attorney and Jeremy, they were pretty frustrated by this because they felt like when you vote on ordinance changes that are related to a moratorium, then the moratorium automatically goes away once you've addressed those things. But I don't think the whole select board really understood that concept because the moratorium goes 6 months each time. And so they weren't thinking that when they put recommended the ordinance changes, that would stop the moratorium once those were voted on. So we went back and forth about that a bunch of times, and Jeremy and Bill came up with a scenario where we could address only part of what was in the moratorium.
It's so complicated.
It really, I mean, it was just beyond painful to go through this. But basically, at this point, the bigger thing for you guys is there is going to be a discussion between the planning board and the select board and really anybody else who wants to be involved. We're a little bit stuck on it, I think, because Jeremy and Audra haven't felt like they have clear direction, understandably, because different, the Conservation Commission was very opposed to having new ones. The planning board started out kind of going along with what the harbor committee had said and then switched. The harbor committee, upon listening to more of this conversation, said, oh, well, we don't really know if we were ever asked whether we wanted to prohibit additional piers. So had we been asked that, we may have responded differently. Jeremy and Sophie feel that they actually were asked that because they were asked about what the recommendation was for pier density. And so because they were asked that, so it's just kind of right now, any input would be welcome. It would be a good time I had actually been texting with Will the other day, asking him if he could find the stuff from before that he had sent us, which was kind of clearly applicable possibly to, and I don't think he has done that, and I haven't circled back. So if anybody had the energy to pull up what the commentary was before that, the National Natural Historic Landmark
Oh, yeah.
designation
I remember.
was through the National Park Service, was kind of a clear overlap with the types of things that this committee might reasonably weigh in on. And most of or at least some of the select board is new since then. So that would be
Helpful.
yeah, that would definitely be helpful. Also, maybe, considering the Curtis Island work being done and, protecting or thinking about what the scenic view from Curtis Island is and whether,
Oh, yeah.
speaking of Curtis Island.
Yeah, we could probably find that.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah, I just was like trying to go look through my email quickly one day and I didn't find it, but it might be good to review that. And that was sort of this last minute thing where Will had come up with some good stuff and some others, jumped in but it wasn't with enough time to have it be an actual, formal recommendation. It would be good to see if everybody wanted to do that or not.
Okay.
And I don't think you were here yet, but Will is gonna attend next
Oh, that's great.
month. So,
And then just another thing quickly, I don't know if you guys have heard, there is for Chestnut Street. And this may or may not be something you would want to get involved in, but the trees that were taken down, has that been discussed at all?
There's been scuttlebutt, but keep going.
That I've heard quite a bit. This has not been discussed at the select board level. I've just had quite a few people come to me and ask about what the town could do with does anybody know what I'm talking about? That there was a significant number of trees removed on Chestnut Street, a parcel that is actually part of the Greenfield subdivision.
Mhm.
And so, for anybody that would have been here in, I forget whether it was the 80s or the 90s, but there was a significant process that happened where that subdivision was approved. And one of the things that is part of the DEP approved site plan is this, I think it's a 50-foot buffer of pine trees on Chestnut Street. And those were mostly completely removed by somebody who bought that parcel and actually had wanted to, I think maybe did succeed in changing their address to Chestnut Street. Yeah, it's like somebody that wanted a clear lot on Chestnut Street rather than just buying a clear lot that is already existing in the Greenfield subdivision, of which there are several, but one that is on Chestnut Street and clear cut it.
I wrote a short letter to Dave, St. Laurent,
Oh, okay.
about that being part of Isabella Stewart Gardner's rock wall
Oh,
and for retaining the rock wall. I sent it to Dave because one day I saw him on the street and I was asking about what was going on there. And so it was part of her big 22-acre parcel, and I pointed out that it started down on Chestnut Street at the house that had been moved. I don't know what it's called, but it's before the house, the Gambrel house that was called Belvedere Lodge, which was the gatehouse. It's the house closer to town on Chestnut Street. Her property started there, and you can clearly see the rock wall that goes
Oh.
like this and like this
Okay.
up Chestnut, and it goes beyond the cleared off lot. So I, as a private citizen, I just sent that to him and said if there's any way to retain that wall, but I didn't send it to anyone else. And
I mean, the
If there was an
DEP
ordinance
even,
protected-
I know some have sent, the DEP, I think, has jurisdiction over that site plan. And I didn't know how the Chestnut Street Historic District, is that,
it mentioned it
It's
in
part-
Chestnut Street Historic District.
It goes up to, well, it goes up to the top of the hill and then over, and there's a sign on the other side.
right?
Though
okay.
at the top of the hill, it stops being really historic looking.
Well, what the,
Except for that, there's one little house, it's right next to another house. But the other, I mean, there's like a cave with a sort of neo Georgian entrance, yeah, but the houses. Except for one on the other, at the, beyond the top of the hill, are very little concern to any historic district.
well, what
So it
the
is within the. boundaries.
application for the Chestnut Street Historic District doesn't mention that walk wall specifically, but it does say what makes that a historic district is the combination of the rock walls, the trees, and the placement of the way that houses were added to the district, you know, for different years. But it mentions the fact that
The trees
it's the
and the rock wall.
combination of the landscape, the rock wall, and so, anyway,
Did we
I'll send you
consider
that.
relocating the driveway
I'm
as
sorry.
well? Did
I
we
think
do-
that will probably be stopped, but
Mhm.
it's important, I think, every time when we, because the town goes through these lengthy processes to approve these subdivisions, and it's often
Yeah.
controversial. And then it seems that it's for, you know, the conditions were forgotten, so I'm sure that one of the concerns with and you can read old articles, one of the concerns with this big subdivision would have been the impact to Chestnut Street. And so there's this
Mhm.
50-foot buffer of pine trees. Now, it shouldn't be acceptable to even, I don't know what the plan is now for him to maybe have to replant, but there is no just replanting that. It should be, what's to stop the next person from then cutting down and then saying, I'm gonna replant? And so, I think it's helpful to the town sometimes to have groups saying, hey, this is something that everybody agreed on and we need somebody to enforce it, whether that be the DEP or because this guy's a fighter.
It's the guy who did the subdivision, who did it?
No,
No,
it's just somebody that bought the
Oh.
parcel to build on. It's a different
Person.
person.
Mhm.
Because the subdivision was approved like, you know, over 20 years
Ages
ago.
ago.
Yeah.
Should I send what I sent to Dave St. Laurent? I think I copied you on that.
I'm surprised Beatty isn't onto that.
Well, initially, when people were asking about it, the response that they got was that there's nothing, the town can't do anything to stop this, which is true generally. That somebody can, as long as it's not in the public right of way, somebody can cut down all the trees on their property that they want, as long as they're not in the shoreline zone. But, in this case, there's an approved subdivision plan that,
yeah,
so there is, I think if some people who may have been told at the beginning that there was nothing they could do. It took me, I was telling people about it at the beginning too, after I asked, but then somebody else came to me and said, hey, remember this? It's like, oh,
Wow.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's-
now there is some kind of, Jeremy said that there was some kind of ongoing action. But
That's what I heard, yeah.
I wonder if it's, I wonder if it's,
I think it's a violation of
absolutely.
the district, the historic district.
a good friend of mine's brother is in the house behind that, and there's all sorts of stuff going on, I remember, yeah. I mean, he's upset because the house might now have to be closer to his land or something, you know. I think it's gonna be a long time before anything's resolved, from what I've heard. You know?
But it would be good, yeah, I mean, I know that he's trying to, a lot of people just come and try to pay the penalty and move on with whatever it is that they
Yeah.
wanted to do. But a reminder that it wasn't just a 50-foot buffer of trees for any old
Mhm.
reason. It was, has an impact to the historic district, I think would be an important
Mhm.
angle, because the town goes through so much work to try to define these things, and then all these public hearings, and if somebody can just come along and
I couldn't believe it, the huge machine, it looked like it was just strip mined,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
it just, it
It
overnight.
does look like he's gonna, you know.
was like a Lorax.
Yeah, it's-
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
burning, and it just, just,
Saruman.
and that's the kind of thing that I think people expect, that isn't there something the town can do? And so it's up to sometimes groups like this to pull from the
Mhm.
documents and say, hey, well, there's this we can say, there's this we can say.
Mhm.
Um,
Do you have any advice for our committee about what we
I
can
think,
do?
write a letter on behalf of the committee to Jeremy and the DEP.
Mhm.
For the planning board?
You've already done.
Mhm.
Well, not to Jeremy. I just sent it to Dave St. Laurent and said, what's going on?
Yeah, he just had driveway entrance permits, so that would probably help him to be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't approve this. But beyond that, to know that, you know, people care for different reasons. I doubt it's coming up over there to think about the impact of the historic district, and that might be a more,
Mhm.
not to mention it's in the plan that they're supposed to maintain this 50-foot buffer of trees.
Yes,
Mhm.
that's
You know,
law.
I guess I wonder, how does that get missed in the permitting and not be proactively stated? We will not cut 50 feet.
Oh, I think it was.
Apparently, you know, it's something, it would be a deed restriction.
Mhm.
But because one of the things is that subdivision doesn't have a homeowners association, because the town accepted the roads. We're having another problem with that actually too, because they have a stormwater plan, a pond that was part of that approved subdivision, and it failed years ago. The town, as we tend to do, Rockbrook Drive, there are many of them where the town accepts these private roads
Mhm.
are built as part of subdivision plans that have common areas as well. And then the town accepts the road as a public road, but doesn't do anything about the common areas. And so, or they kind of get forgotten, and sometimes they include things like stormwater ponds or restrictive covenants that somebody's gonna need to oversee. So when the subdivisions no longer have to get together to fund, to
Mhm.
get money for a road, they tend to have no real reason to meet and be active. And so nobody's paying attention to all of this. And so I think that's what's happened in Greenfield, is that there's no enforcing
Mhm.
entity.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody else over there in that subdivision. They were saying they had things in their deeds that they weren't clear how they could,
Yeah.
you know, enforce it. And I think that's a big problem that the town has, like figuring out what should trigger. You know, I don't know how that would have, I don't think anybody needs to ask permission to cut down those trees, generally speaking. And so that's maybe why the town didn't, no residential construction requires planning board approval. So, which I think is a big
Mhm.
mistake, because our whole ordinance is designed to kind of protect the town from new commercial construction over 1,000 square feet.
Right.
And maybe at one point that was the thing that we anticipated needing to protect the town against, but now it's, you know, residential projects, residential landscaping projects even.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are all things that the town, the historic resources can make recommendations on at some point, to just write a letter of concern to.
This seems like something that all should live in the ordinance.
Yeah, I looked at a bunch of ordinances and walls, which are, I guess, would include rocks, were frequently included. I never saw anything about trees. But you could put them, you could, in an ordinance, I suspect, put in tree protection.
Oh, yeah, even some on private property, you know who's.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's.
Right.
Yeah,
Landscaping is included in some of the.
okay, yes, yeah, I mean, you know,
You know,
I mean,
protecting.
certainly the preservation of rock walls is a public good.
Mhm.
You know, really, so I would, you know.
Yeah, and the tree thing too, that even, we have a great way to protect them right in the public right of way, but there are some really special trees that are outside of the public
Yeah.
right of way that,
And
I know that's why Dee Dee has come to our meetings for so many
Yeah.
years, because she says those history people were the only ones that would speak up for the trees sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to do?
All right, well,
Sorry.
moving on to old business, we've already touched upon the historical preservation ordinance, so I don't think we need to go over that again. Chestnut walking tour, I don't think Rhonda has new information for us on that.
You could connect that right back to our conversation too, the Chestnut Street walking tour.
Yeah,
Tell Rhonda to put something in the pamphlet about the.
oh, yeah, exactly.
Chestnut, what, that's
Sorry.
different from the one that goes on already?
Yes.
This would be a special Chestnut Street tour?
Yes,
Yeah,
we've been working on it.
Oh,
just
cool.
over- And it doesn't include every house.
Mhm,
there's been some hiccups.
mhm.
Yeah, there's been some hiccups with how to format with the printer. Because there's a lot of information, so it's how do we reduce the amount of information so it's a usable brochure for somebody who's walking? That we're working on that. I don't think we have any more St. Thomas Bell Tower information, right?
No, the leadership has changed at St. Thomas.
Oh,
The director took a sabbatical, but also now has left, and we have an interim rector. So I think things are on hold.
interesting. Was there gonna be like a congregation vote?
Well,
Or,
no, that hasn't been scheduled, but
okay,
they're still working on the historical physical conditions report that
Okay.
they're required to do.
okay, great.
I have one thing just to offer. The, Mike has contacted a woman who does historical assessments, architectural assessments for how much deterioration has happened in a building or a lighthouse. And she's going to work, we think, on the Curtis Island Lighthouse. And I kept thinking it would be so great if we could just offer her name to the Episcopal Church people and say, contact this woman, maybe she has some ideas and she can get under that plastic and see what's under there, because everybody's like reluctant to tear off the plastic and see how bad it is. And yet I felt like, well, we would be overstepping, Mike and I, if we, sent this along to the Episcopal Church. So maybe we can just tell you, or how could we say, hey, this is a great resource. It's expensive, but it would be
Mhm.
somebody who could go in and say, this is really as bad as they think it is, or it's not. What do you think,
Yes.
Rosalie? How's the best place to share that information?
Yes, I think, whatever input you have, anyone has,
Yeah.
at this point, since everything's on hold, anything you have could be addressed to the senior warden
Mhm.
right now, and her name is Elizabeth Moran.
Is Elizabeth?
Yeah,
Okay,
and, offering, this possibility.
okay,
Nancy Barbet was involved in she's a historic architect. She's the architect of the
right.
redoing of High Mountain Hall. But she has great credentials in historic restorations. And she did a report, just basically having looked at it one time.
Right, and
But
that was a
without
good
going
report.
underneath the
Yeah.
plastic herself. But if this person is an engineer or
She
an
is.
architect, I
You
mean.
might drill holes in the wood or something and see what's in it.
Yeah, and they're applying a lot of new science to the whole restoration process, and they come in with a team and they'll assess, the paint, they'll do minimal invasive
Yeah.
work, so it's not really messing up the structure.
They
they'll
worked on the lighthouse.
Remeasure it, they do a whole thing, so they
Wait,
create a
these are the
restoration plan.
people you're talking about?
Yeah,
the same?
It's called Historic Architects, LLC. And they did Burnt Coat Harbor Light, Lighthouse, Swan's Island.
That's how we found out about them.
Hmm.
And I've just recently, maybe getting into my stuff a little bit, but I've applied for a grant to pay for that.
Do they specialize in stone building?
Oh, yeah, stone,
Yeah.
brick. They're doing, I think, the second tallest lighthouse, the light tower.
Mhm.
I think it's in Florida, I'm not sure, but
Well, as I understand it,
they're doing the Olson House as
yeah,
well.
the covering now on the tower at St. Thomas will have to be replaced because it's now like 3 or 4 years old and is beginning to deteriorate. But they're going to put another one on until such time as there is a decision made and money to go forward in whatever direction. So, that, you know, when they take it off, it'd be great to.
Yeah.
So
have
Pat,
that- have
are
that
you
group.
comfortable forwarding that information to?
Yeah, forward it to Elizabeth.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And, you know, copy me on it and I'll continue to follow up on it.
Okay.
So we've dovetailed right into Curtis Island. Michael, do you want to give us an update?
Okay, so this is sort of my other hat. So we formed Curtis Island Lighthouse Foundation.
You did,
It's
okay.
legal in Maine. We applied for 501c3 federal nonprofit. We got that. That's been accepted.
Oh
Wow.
my gosh.
Yeah, well, that was
A big
that's
step.
important.
Yeah, and that was relatively quick.
Yeah,
That usually
yeah.
takes a while.
Pardon?
That usually takes a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there some under the table?
No, cajoling or anything. I did use the easy method. It's they have an abbreviated method that they've had for some time. So it's not as complicated. And once you reach a certain threshold of income coming in, then you have to file a more complicated or updated. But it's a great way to get it started and, you know, you can have, I think you can be over the amount you bring in for 3 years. And they won't renew it if you don't upgrade, you know, the application at some point. Anyway, so that being said, so there's so many kind of things going right now. We're in the kind of a quiet phase, you know, we really haven't gone public. We're working on a memorandum of understanding for the select board ultimately. And just to say, here's the role, this is what the foundation will do, this is what the town will do, just so it's really clear. And that isn't clear at this point. And it's not a problem now, but it will be at some point, depending on what the foundation chooses to take on. And so I've had some discussions with Audra, Jeremy's working with Audra now on Curtis Island. It's kind of a point person or helping out. And, you know, Audra will be introducing it to the select board. Maybe she's got us tentatively down for the 9th of November, but that's a bit iffy in terms of there's so many items there.
What about the town attorney? The town attorney,
What about?
has the town attorney been involved in these
No,
machinations?
not, it's about ready to go. The foundation has not submitted what we would like to have for our memorandum of understanding. So it's drafted, it's under discussion, and then that will be presented, you know, through the town, ultimately to the select board.
And it's my understanding that no further renovation or work is actually being done on the physical site at the moment.
Well, Audra is managing that part. I've kind of stepped back from pushing who's doing what. there's supposed to, my understanding, there's supposed to be a temporary fix on the roof. You know, the roofing contractor was not able to do everything for the amount of money that was in the budget. And what we thought we made clear at the beginning was when you redo the roof, do the gutters, do the fascia boards, everything connected with the roof, so you don't have to redo it again.
Mhm.
And so, there was some discussions there. They came back and said, oh, it's gonna be over $100,000. So that kind of set us back. And now we're looking at what kind of a temporary fix can we make just to protect and preserve the
For the
property this winter.
Yeah, so I was
Just
wondering,
like the homestead at the, this
Pardon?
is just like our homestead discussions at the Historical Society.
is it vulnerable for this winter? Are there things?
Right now, the way it stands, it is because there's still a temporary patch on the roof and what we agreed to, Audra had agreed to, I think, was to put get the shingles, similar kind of shingles, because those shingles that are there are a little oddball, they're not full size. And just patch it in, repair it this fall. And that's what we're waiting to do.
Well, you're not,
I'm not.
you're not waiting, you're,
What,
I'm waiting.
she's
to
waiting
see
for the
stuff.
contractor to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
is there a reason that we wouldn't just tarp it really well?
Just one.
Just-
Tarp, like professionally tarp it?
Well, that's what was done earlier and some of it blew off. And it was done after the December.
And it's been repaired once
It's been
too.
repaired once.
The tarp has been
The
repaired.
feeling is it probably needs more than tarp on it.
Or in addition to, what we did at the Historical Society is, or in the process of doing is, we removed the shingles and did ice and water shield. And then put a tarp,
Over the ice and water shield.
yeah,
I think it has, what it has now is an ice and water shield that's part of its flapping ground. So,
and it wasn't done.
and that was supposed, I think that could possibly be a reason. So that was supposed to
You're
be
so polite.
actually repaired before FEMA came. Because they didn't want to cover it all up with shingles so FEMA could see it. But I provided a lot of photographs to FEMA and I didn't know that they ever went to the island and not sure where that all stands, if there's money that's coming back from FEMA that we could apply.
That might be maybe we could talk just a little bit more about that at some point
Okay.
and see if, because I have heard different conversations about that sort of loosely. Is there somebody staying out there right now, right?
No,
Is she still staying? No,
she's there maybe 2 to 3 nights a week.
okay.
Yeah.
And checking for leaks or,
Yeah, I mean, I presume she is. And I've been in there with contractors in the last month, and I could still see some ceiling going up the stairs. Could see some ceiling plaster that had fallen out
Since.
since then. There was a lot of.
Cleaned up.
yeah,
It
I mean,
may be
depending on
just-
which way the wind blows, I go over to the homestead every time it rains.
Yeah.
And do things based, and sometimes it's like, oh, well, it's perfectly fine. I guess the tarp worked. And then before it would be like, oh no, the wind's blowing a different direction and it would. Okay, well,
So anyway, and I have messages into Audra and Jeremy.
do you have keys to the building?
Pardon?
Do you have keys to the building?
I have access on certain days of the week.
Like you should. You have all the access. Well, yeah, maybe that, I have a lot of questions I'd love to talk about how I might be able to help her, how even just
Let's do
checking or making sure that all that work that's been done so far doesn't get.
And the call I had was Peter Conover and
I heard that, yeah.
waiting to hear from him. He was out this last weekend And they're continuing, his son Charlie is continuing to mow the lawn and place looks beautiful outside,
Uh-huh.
you know, the house looks like it needs what it needs.
Did they take their
and-
stuff out?
And he, not much, so. I think long-term or shorter term, before construction work, we really need to probably empty it out and either store stuff or decide what's important. So there's a lot of
Mhm.
things that are being
Parts.
considered right now. So anyway, I think the house has stood up to these last rains, okay,
Mhm.
but don't want to not do it for the winter.
Right. So you have a board and everything for the, you said it's called the Curtis Island Lighthouse Foundation, is that
Yes. Mhm.
accurate?
Mhm.
And who,
We can talk about.
okay, great,
After.
that's wonderful. I can't believe how much you've gotten done.
Well,
That's just
Yeah.
amazing.
the grant that we're going after to create this, it's an update on the historic conditions report that Garland Dorsey did.
Mhm.
So that provided a good picture of the conditions, but it's to develop a preservation plan, and that's what I love about it. And the detail in that report is good enough to go out to bid, to describe to contractors what needs to be done, to what standard, and they're very tight with the Maine Historic Preservation Commission. So it's a lot of good possibilities there. So anyway, I was called up to apply for a grant because the town couldn't apply for it because it has to go to a 501c3.
Oh.
And it happened just almost concurrently with getting our,
It was a Lighthouse Foundation,
the
national.
Maine Lighthouse Trust. And that's the group that collects money from licensed lighthouse license plates. And so as a trust.
They called us to say, hey, we have money.
Would you be
Would
interested?
you apply?
Wow.
Yeah, of
So
course.
I'm feeling positive that
Huh.
we'll get some.
So the grant would be to create a preservation plan?
Yes, a very detailed plan, and I would actually love for the town to be a partner in supporting that plan. Because then the plan really is where you're going, and it's a matter of what the timeline is. You
Yeah,
know, how fast the money comes in to do the work. But it's all structured and it covers all the structures out there.
Yeah, we'd want to make sure that the town was involved in that because they have a history sometimes of having plans and then somebody else comes in and says, oh, that plan that they did wasn't really.
No,
Well, or make
there's-
sure everybody feels some ownership.
Yeah, I think the foundation has been, let's get formed.
Mhm.
Know where we're going and know what we want to do and know,
And get the memorandum together.
yeah, before
And then-
much goes public on it. And
Gosh,
why
that's what we
I-
need at the Historical Society, a preservation plan, something.
Hmm.
You're making me think about the Historical Society. That's what we need is a preservation plan,
Oh,
really, not just whatever, a few people decide on any given Sunday that it's important to save this week. And
This,
deciding what to fix first and all that stuff is.
So this person that we met with, as I
Isabel.
mentioned, she is
What was her name?
Annabelle.
Annabelle.
First, but she, they're working on the Olson House with the, Farnsworth, yeah.
Mhm.
And they're doing major historic structures in this country and abroad too, so there. But she was wonderful. I mean, we got her here and she met with the board and
You said the name of the firm, you said
it's
it.
called Historic Architects LLC. I think that's the name of it.
Are they out of Maine or are they from
Yeah, they're
someplace
from
else?
Trenton, New Jersey.
Trenton?
But what she does is they bring a team and they fully evaluate it. They have ways of photographing interior to get what's the building now to really define the building. you can really see where the building has changed. And I think one of the great things about this is the building has not been changed much. And even though it looks rough, the structure has been, and we know enough that, it hasn't had a lot of failure in the structure, but that's coming if we don't
Yeah,
get that roof and new siding and.
So this is, the grant would be for the keeper's house and
It'd be for
and
the whole
light,
property,
the whole property,
yeah.
The barn,
the light.
the house.
this is fantastic news.
Yeah.
So I think that's great. The two of you want to continue this conversation. I think that's really important. So moving on to, I know there's some exciting news with the Mount Bowdy plaque.
Okay. We have changed that rock that the plaque is going to go on 6 times, and honestly, I have to go out to Rockport Granite one more time. I refuse to get out of the car. But anyway, Tom Jackson has volunteered he said he loves town projects. He would be glad to take the rock up to Mount Bowdy. He'd be glad to dig the hole. We were gonna dig the hole. He will dig the hole to place it. He'll place it in as soon as it's ready. Well, everything is ready except what's holding us up now? Oh, that the stone that we chose has to be cut down. It's too tall. It has to be cut off. It's
a
an
rock.
upright stone. It's kind of a block like this, and it's granite. And it's going to be like 3 feet tall
Above the ground.
above
So
the ground.
You
But
go
it's that.
down on the plaque, or is the plaque?
Yeah.
Plaque will be on the front face.
It's like a cut stone though.
No,
No,
this
it's
is
a
a rock.
It's just a rock and then you're gonna cut the top off.
Well,
Well,
it's a piece
Dig the hole.
of.
It's a piece of granite that had been milled and,
Okay, that's
you
it.
know, it's got rough edges.
Mhm,
It's- The
yeah.
top is not square, the
going
top
for
kind of
an
goes like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And that's
yeah,
where the-
so, yeah,
Yeah, and the plaque will go on the
Which is
front
actually,
though,
yeah.
kind of more like a
They
gravestone.
just had to cut it.
I hate to say that, but we don't want it on the top because the top is rough and natural looking.
Yeah.
So
That's
the
good to be.
block is about
Can't you
like
dig
this,
the hole?
cable,
Mhm.
They're gonna dip
So
the hole
it's a little
about 2
thinner.
feet,
but they're gonna
But I
cut
mean,
off
why do you need to trim the
the
rock?
excess.
because it was about 6 feet tall when we
That's a
started.
big
And
hole.
we went out.
We better go one at a time for the owl.
Yeah, how far down does it have to go into the
2
ground?
feet,
Yeah, it's
20
going down about
20 inches.
It'll be resting on ledge.
Where did you find it? How did you?
At
find it?
Rockport Granite,
Oh, they've done wonderful.
they've been great, and they're donating the rock.
Wow.
Tom Jackson is moving it for the town.
This is a great story.
Yeah, so what we're paying for is the plaque, which is about $400, I think, when all was done. The
Mhm.
bronze plaque.
So when
We've seen the
somebody
plaque.
donates services like that, do we, as a committee, should we be writing a thank you letter?
Yeah.
And is there some way to acknowledge that donation?
As soon as we get it done.
Okay,
But I wrote, no, never mind, that's for the other plaque. So it's exciting, and so we talked with Sunshine, the park director on Sunday. And said, we've changed the rock again, and here's a picture of the rock, and she said, I have to run it by my supervisor, but she liked it. And she told us that the celebration for the new park road and all that had been called off in October. And now she told us Sunday that it's back on again. They're not sure the governor is coming, but they're going to, October 25th. They're gonna have something on the mountain commemorating the new paving of the road. And even though they won't have the walkways done, which was why they had
ADA.
canceled it before, the ADA compliant walkways, those won't be done, but they're at least gonna recognize the fact that the road is done. Maybe the governor will be here. So we said we really would like to have that placed before that happens.
Good.
I don't foresee having any ceremony up there, just have it there by the 25th.
yeah,
Mike and I are going out of town on the 20th and on the 19th, and we won't be back for about a week, so we asked if they could have it placed before the 19th, before we go, because we don't want to leave this for somebody else to do.
Okay.
So hopefully that will be done.
Okay.
That was a long story.
Loop me in for any ways that you need me to.
Yeah.
Hand something off.
I think it's,
Okay.
as long as they, and we told the fellow who's cutting the rock off the date, and he said, oh, well, he would see that it was done. It's been, you're so dependent upon when other people can do their pieces, and then you have to go back and tell Sunshine, oh, this has changed, and then she tells us that has changed. It's been a circus.
But you know. In a finalized way, where the rocks are gonna go. As per the path, like the path location has been finalized.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been up there pounding
Great,
things in to see how deep we could go in different places, so
great.
I hope everybody likes it
No, the
because.
path looks fantastic, and I'm sure the rock.
And I did communicate with Randy Stearns about a month or two ago now and said, this is happening. If you have any input, please share the information with your group. If you have any input, let us know. Haven't heard back from him,
Well,
so.
Tom Jackson, if you have Tom Jackson involved, he's like he does so much wonderful
there.
stuff and is so connected to
Yeah.
people that it's almost like if you have his endorsement and that's really all you need.
He said, I just love these town projects.
He's just so amazing. And a lot of the time he doesn't want to get credit for it
Yeah,
either. He does so much free stuff over at the Historical Society. He's on our board, does all of the plowing and everything. And he's always resistant when we try to do some kind of a recognition. He's just a really wonderful person.
well,
So he's on board for that date, right?
for that, he's gonna dig
And
it.
he's gonna, it's a heavy stuff. Piece of granite. Yes.
We put in smaller rocks for us, and they're still in place. so.
Yeah.
He's so
So
great.
should I just move on
Yeah,
to
Let's
the
move on to.
the Great Fire District, thanks. So the Great Fire District is kind of connected. We've got, the post has been ready forever. We've been waiting for Adventure Advertising to finish the marker text with a picture on it. And so we put a little pressure on them again this morning and said, we're going out of town. We need that done. So last time I talked with Chris, he suggested an article about the Great Fire District for the paper. So I wrote an article and said, basically it says, a new plaque will be appearing at Camden National Bank at the corner of Elm and Main Street. And then I did a little history of the Great Fire District.
It's a great article.
Well, thank you.
I couldn't believe that. I love the quotes you gave from the paper at the time, but how bullish they were on the town's future. It was so,
Yeah,
it was really interesting.
I found a real
They
gem.
were so uplifting back then. Like,
Yeah.
they're like,
It was just the way they talked, and Rockland, the Courier Gazette had, praising Camden, our lovely neighbor and whatever. And I thought, that's what we need more of today. I don't care how corny it is. It's like, we need more endorsing each other and supporting each other. But anyway, so I put the reactions of 3 different newspapers in the area. After the week after the Great Fire, they sent articles to the Camden Herald saying, you go Camden, basically. And so I ended the article with that, and I'll send you all a copy of it today, so you can read.
And we'll let you know when it's happening.
Oh, that's
So
the other
The
thing.
post is like an 8 by 7 foot piece of granite stone,
Goodness.
rough cut
It's, it sounds big, but it's not. It's like the one that's in front of the Farnsworth that has the butterfly information on it. The post.
It has it's cut at an angle.
Oh,
And so they gave us this, they
Thank
did
you.
all the work on it, they cut it, they drilled holes in it. And then Rockport, that was Rockport Granite, Rockport Steel built a stainless steel base that will plug into the stone and the granite. And then,
up into the plaque.
the plaque will attach.
Oh, great.
And they donated that. So in my article, I credited, thanks to these supporters,
You
but anyway.
credited everyone except yourself and Michael.
Oh.
I noticed.
Well, the thing is, we're waiting for DigSafe right now. That's what's holding us up in Camden. I mean, at the Camden National Bank, everything's ready to go. But you have to contact
Oh,
the bank's maintenance person. I think he's in Bangor, and he calls DigSafe, and we call him back and he goes, well, 2 people from DigSafe have signed off, but I'll let you know when it's ready to go. It's like,
There's a law, they have 3 days once they're contacted.
how many?
Yeah, they-
3,
And I think he
I
didn't
think
put the
it might have-
request in.
yeah.
for like 2 weeks after we talked with him.
There are 2 stakes in there now, so,
Yeah, so anyway, that's all I have to say about that, and I'll
and
send
it's
you.
right on that
Right.
corner, you probably all know, but it's right in that
So
little
you can look
garden.
right down Main Street, you
Oak
read the
Street.
plaque, and you look right down Main Street.
And so you'll look right up Main Street, and this is the exact old picture from that
On the
very
plaque.
spot.
Very
The
soon.
second plaque.
There.
So that's enough of that.
That's great.
The photograph of after the fire, that should be submitted in with the,
Newspaper.
with the bridge repair, the bridge redoing, because the DEP sending out
Yeah.
notices about it and all that.
Yeah.
But that's one of the great pictures of what, where the.
I think
the
that's
river
one, I sent that picture with the article to the newspaper. Which,
But anyway, I just, they just came out with the.
So they have
oh,
their.
it's a new picture, you mean?
No, they just
MDOT.
came out with a meeting with a, or do you want to be involved with?
Okay, is it too late to be involved?
No, there's virtual public input is, MDOT is doing all of their public input process now is through this on demand. It's on the link is on the town website.
Mhm.
So they're looking at the Main Street Bridge and they have a presentation about what's needed and what different options they're looking at. And so no, it's not too late at all. It's goes.
I would love to see them build that bridge, a little push out for people. There are always people standing there looking upstream.
Instead of
and
just
build-
looking it straight across, just have a little curve in it, so people could get off the sidewalk.
And maybe with seats around there, I mean, just something to create a little public space.
You'll have to grant them.
Well, there's, if you really want to get into this, Mary Louise Curtis Bach had a vision for this 100 years ago when she did the work she paid for the public land after she'd done the Harbor Park, she paid for the public landing to be started. And that is another thing that the town's going to be looking at is the public landing, but she had the Olmsteads design a whole thing for the public landing, and the agreement was for the town was supposed to slowly implement it. One of her other requests was that she thought the Main Street Bridge at the time was just ugly. It looks very similar to the way it looks
Today.
now, kind of. But she wanted she wanted the buildings removed from 2 of the buildings, at least 2 of the buildings removed from the river, looking toward the public landing at Curtis Island and all that stuff. And so did the county at the time, because the bridge was going to be difficult to construct in the proper way. So she wanted this beautiful bridge. She wanted the buildings removed so that she could see the parks that she had just was working to create. The town actually did vote to take those by eminent domain and didn't, for some reason, happen. But
Is that where the nail salon is now?
yeah. And so as part of one of the things that MDOT said, there are multiple buildings have illegal connections to the bridge. They're using it as structural support. So that's one of the reasons that 2026 is the planned construction date at this point, because it's going to take a while to work things out with the bridge. But figuring out how that can all be a little bit more attractive. Their presentation is really interesting because it shows you just how complicated it is and how the town's main water company has utilities, like a water line that's hanging down underneath. The town has some sewer stuff. There's all kinds of stuff because you have to open up the dam in order to do work down there. So, which also looks terrible. And so there's just years and years of planning down there that doesn't look at it aesthetically, and because you're just trying to get it filled back up quickly so that nobody has to look at it. So they're kind of going through these different options of removing the center pier and I think, thinking about aesthetically how that all looks during the times, no matter what happens with the dam in the future, there are times when that has to be drawn down, no matter what, whether it stays or not. So figuring out how at least this is our one shot at that bridge for the next, 100 years, 50 years or whatever. So thinking about how that bridge could be, a little bit more aesthetically pleasing from different angles, or looking at what Mrs. Bach, I think, gosh, what would she have done there with it? The Olmsted's, how they make those beautiful bridges that are arched and, but
Well, do you think the DOT is gonna be open to what the town wants? Or
They
is
say
the
they're-
DOT have their preconceived ideas of what they want? Just a question.
no, it seems like they're very open to what the town wants. They, it seems that they're basically deciding between trying to do a patch job that just kind of gets us, I think, through the next 15 years or something, or doing closer to what really should be done. Bridges now don't have these center piers. They're supposed to be, free underneath, as open as possible underneath, because a lot of stuff is getting stuck in there. And so that's been an issue for them. They come and pull things out after big storms, with a boom truck. I mean, it's just a mess. They ask to have the thing lowered, and then, so I think they would like that to be less maintenance intensive for them, but they're trying to,
Listen to the town.
it's kind of the public input process. I don't know if you've done one of those before. It might be fun. You can go through and you can look at all their different projects in the state, but it's an on-demand public meeting. So you listen to their presentation and then you can give comments. And I read, gone through it a couple times, and it just felt a little bit like the quality of comments is sometimes better because you can digest it all, what you're hearing, and then provide comments rather than that public meeting where everybody's here and you're
Yeah.
getting all for the first time, and then you're like, oh, well, then you kind of go home and wish you maybe had said something else, or I think there'll be multiple rounds of it probably, but this, I think they called it their pre-design public meeting, or, but yeah, I mean, I think that would be the perfect time to make comments like that. And especially, they have their own process with the abutting property owners. So they've already had their own meeting apparently. And I'm sure they'll have more meetings, but the important thing right now is, they're looking for, what is the public desire?
Good.
So, maybe a nice place for a sign or something on that.
Next project.
Yeah.
Great. So I think we can kind of move to a conclusion here. I'm going to add two things from our meeting today to new business. One, looking at perhaps writing a letter to the Chestnut, looking into a letter coming from the committee addressing the 50-foot tree clearance there, and also advocating for us to look at the on-demand presentation and comment about the bridge construction. So anything else we want to talk about here before we end the meeting? Again, thank you, Michael, for everything. Great job. All right, motion to close the meeting. All right. Thank you.
Interesting. Lots going on.